And if folks pop in after we are recording, they'll get a video of it as well. And we'll just start with some introductions too. So hopefully folks won't miss too much.
My bottle leaks all over the place, just FYI.
Okay. You can take off the top. Remember the table.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. If folks join a few minutes late, that's okay. They can catch up via video afterwards, or again, we're just going to start with some introductions and they won't miss sort of the meat of what we have to share today. So thanks everybody for joining us on this Tuesday morning or afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. My name is Sharon Houghton and I am with Outside. It's nice to meet all of you. I'm going to be your moderator for today. And I'm really excited to introduce to you Jason and Chelsea Magnus and Ben Joyce. So I'm going to pass it to them quickly just to do some self-introductions. We'll start with you, Jason and Chelsea, and then move to you, Ben. And then I'm going to do a few housekeeping items before we jump into the rest of the webinar. So go ahead, Jason and Chelsea, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Chelsea Magnus, and we're from Bend, Oregon, and on Team Bend Racing.
Yep, and we've been spending the last, I don't know, 15 or so years exploring both adventure racing and endurance racing, as well as acrobatics and just a lot of, basically seeing all the crazy things we can do with our bodies and minds and how that all connects. And we've been really excited to learn a lot about ways to continue doing that as we age gracefully, or as gracefully as we can.
You're Jason.
I'm Jason, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Ben, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ben Joyce. I am founder and CEO of Mission Farm CBD, which is also here in Bend, Oregon. I used CBD for the first time years ago, and it helped me sleep so much better than I had been sleeping, having 3 kids and stress from work and that kind of thing, and got really interested in the science of it. Happened to be in one of the greatest hemp growing regions in the world, and that led to the launch of Mission Farms. And I just always really enjoy helping people understand the benefits of CBD and how it might help them in the stress or anxiety or sports performance.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to learn more about Mission Farms today and hear more about what you, Jason and Chelsea, put your bodies through. It sounds very intense. So you guys can see some of the pictures that we've got up here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just so we can get a better view of the panelists while we're talking. I think that'll be more inviting. We've got a few things to share towards the end. Just a couple housekeeping items. If you're going to ask questions, please use the Q&A functionality down there at the bottom of the webinar. That's where we'll be answering questions. We're going to try and answer questions as much as possible real time. If we don't get to your question right away, we will have plenty of time for Q&A towards the end of the webinar. So we will do our best not to miss you and get all of your questions answered. If you are hearing impaired, possibly there is a live transcript button down there on the bottom right, or if you just need some extra visuals, please choose to use that. We want to make sure that everybody can follow along, hear or read appropriately for the webinar. So we've already done some introductions. Let's jump in. We're just going to have a discussion here between the 4 of us, I guess. So Jason, Chelsea, tell us what adventure racing is. Like, what is it? How did you guys get into it? And what do you put your bodies through over the course of your adventure racing and training?
Yeah. I'll start just because it's a bold statement, but I think adventure racing is quite possibly like the best sport in the world that nobody knows about, especially for people that, like read Outside magazine and just enjoy the outdoors, because it's this crazy sport that combines basically everything that most outdoor adventurers like to do in one event that can go on for up to 10 days. And the easy way to say it's like a triathlon where you're doing a bunch of different things, but you're with a team So you always have somebody to share your misery with and to share your successes with, which I find very, very valuable, because when you get done, you have these shared experiences. And it's map and compass navigation, and you get to choose your own route. So it's a lot of the, the race element, because you're on the clock and you're trying to get through a huge course, but it's also the, the expedition element, the teamwork, and there's no set way to do things. So, as you grow as a team, you can, choose different routes, and the course is always different. So it's not like you can go to Ironman Hawaii and you do the same course year after year and you try to get faster. Every single race that we've ever done, over 100 of them, has a brand new course, in a brand new location. So you get to explore the world, trash your bodies, your gear, and see each other and your teammates at their worst and their best. And so it's just been an amazing experience for us, coming from other athletics and getting into adventure racing.
Yeah. It's like the ultimate adaptability training, because you're constantly learning, you're constantly making mistakes, you're constantly growing. And like Jason said, it is the best sport.
Yeah, we're biased. We've chosen it. I think we both came from like a mountain biking and triathlon background, and then I did my first adventure race because it was called an off-road triathlon, and it wasn't that at all. So it was an adventure race, and we got lost and miserable, and it took us 16 hours to finish a 12-hour race. So we were behind the curve, but we had a great time. And Chelsea and I had our 4th date doing an adventure race, and it was the first race that I ever won. And so that was amazing for me as an athlete. And then, then it made us kind of become a great couple and have a lot of fun. So
the rest is history.
Yeah,
right. So I was looking at some of the pictures, and it looks like they're often teams of 4. Is that standard that it's a team of 4? Can it be any size team? That's question number 1. And then you've mentioned some time, that you had a 16-hour race and it should have been 12. Like, are they all different hours? How long are you often out there for a race?
Yeah, our team specializes in expedition races. Okay. So we're multi-day. Anything over 3 days is an expedition. And that's what we mostly do, but we do dabble in like 24-hour races and 12-hour races for fun.
Yeah. And basically races go from what they call sprint, which is not the right use of the word, but sprint races are like 4 to 6 hours. And then you have races up to, I think the longest one we've done is 11 days. And they're, the longer races are nonstop. So you have to choose when you sleep. Most racers up to 24 hours will just not sleep because, you can sleep when you're done. Right. But it is, and, they have local races that are, 4 to 6 hours long in a state park. And then you have races that literally cross the entire country of Costa Rica or, the peninsula of Patagonia. So you can see a huge amount of terrain, or you can just, be really challenged within a small area with navigation. And that's, that's the one thing, is that it's all map and compass. So there is no marked course, right? So you just have to everybody has to get the certain checkpoints. And so that's when it gets, we might make a choice in Patagonia that takes us 20 hours longer than the team that we're, racing. And then we just have to make it up somewhere else. Right?
Wow.
So,
yeah. And then on the pro circuit, like to go to world championships, you do have to have a team of 4. So on those series, we try to always have a team of 4, or to even compete in those races, we have to have a team of 4. But for the races we put on, you can have a team of
solo 2 or 3 person, because a lot of people, it's harder to find that, and it's also safer for the expedition races in the world circuit. It's 4-person co-ed, so it has to be at least one member of the opposite gender. And then I think the reason they make it 4 is because it's there are safety issues, right? If you're out there and you've got a team of 4 and somebody falls and breaks their leg, and you need somebody to go to get help or to get to an extraction point, you're not leaving somebody alone.
In that team of 4, you're always moving together, right? It's not relay.
Correct. That's a lot of people are like, oh, 4-person team, that sounds great, I get some rest. But
no.
And you can. The great thing is, I think the cornerstone of the sport is teamwork, in the sense that there are no, like, you can carry your teammate, you can tow them, like adventure racers are one of the iconic images is like having a bungee cord attached to the back of your bike, pulling, your teammate's bike or carrying their pack or carrying them. I think one of the photos you showed on the slide is us crossing the finish line, carrying my twin brother, on our back because his feet were so, so blistered and that he couldn't walk anymore. Right. And as long as you cross as a 4-person team, you're successful.
Wow. You have to be pretty comfortable with your teammates. Obviously the two of you are married, so you're comfortable with each other, although that's quite a test of your marital relationship.
It is a test. Yeah, it is a test, but it's made us stronger for
Big
sure.
test.
Yeah. And that's, you get to know your teammates really well. One of the things that I think is remarkable, especially in the bigger races, but even the 24 hours, nobody's going to be up. You can train as much as you want, but everybody's going to have low points. Yep. And so you really get to know your teammates and know how to help them come out of depression, how to, use them when they're feeling strong, and how to be part of a team rather than just, as most endurance athletics are solo. It's like how fast and far can you run the 100-mile race or whatever, or the Ironman, and you're by yourself and you're dealing with your own mental demons and you have to be really tough, but you also don't have to, have anybody to rely on. Right. And so really top teams, in the world, it's all about not necessarily being the strongest, but being willing to work together and to be vulnerable when you're weak and ask for help, and then to shoulder extra weight when you're feeling strong. So it's a pretty, the easy thing is the sport has made us better humans and better parents and a better partners to each other. So.
Yeah. My next question was going to be maybe one from each of you. Tell us a quick story of your favorite either moment in a race, whether it was something funny or something that happened, or maybe a lesson that you learned from racing. Yeah, I'm a parent. I have 2 small kids too. I'm an athlete, nothing quite as extreme as you, but I have done Ironman and some of the long distance racing, and you definitely apply some of those learnings to parenthood or whatever it may be. Give us a moment from each of your racing experiences, or just share us a quick story of your favorite moment in a race. We'd love to hear.
My favorite moments come from what I call my soul race, which is the Patagonian expedition race. It's actually the mountains that I love are right behind us here. And I've just had so many amazing experiences down there. I can't even count on my 2 hands how many experiences I've had or we've had as a team. But every time I go there, it's like I think of me as an onion. And then when I go there, I'm just sloughing off layers of the onion. So if it's us getting lost and me, I'm not a navigator, but I know kind of when Jason.
Wait, do we ever get lost?
Yes. I know when Jason's kind of losing his mind or his edge, and I've become much better over the years of honing in on that, having my confidence and being like, hey, I think we need to sleep. And I think we need to just take a break. And so in this last Patagonian expedition race in 2018, we actually won. And coming into it, we always get really excited when we get to the finish line. We're already thinking about what we're going to do at the finish and all this stuff. And we had only 24 hours left to go. And we got to this point and we were going in circles. And
literally, like we would come back and say, oh no, another team passed us. And then we'd realize it was our footprints. And we try to find our way out of there. And we came back a second time. We're like, oh no, now there's more teams. Yeah. Wait, those are our footprints again. So it was like Winnie the Pooh. I don't know if you know the Winnie the Pooh story when you circle out.
Yeah. And so they were doing this and I was like, these are our footprints, guys. And they were like, no. And finally I was like, no, this is what we're doing. We are sleeping here for at least 2 hours. There's not a team behind us because our other teammate was really stressed out about a team behind us. And I just had this gut feeling that we were super well ahead and we were completely fine. And so I was like, we are going to sleep. Yeah. And sure enough, we woke up and Jason looked at the map and he was just like, oh my gosh.
So easy.
What are we doing? And we just got a bearing on our compass. And he was like, we just have to go this way. Because it had already been 7 days of racing and we were pushing it. And so we were all super fatigued. We wanted to be done. And so we just we started telling ourselves these stories that often happen of like, oh, this has got to be it. But no, we just have to sleep, take a break, get up and then reorient ourselves. So that was kind of cool to be like, oh, even though I'm not a navigator, I know I've been racing so long that I know what we need as a team.
Well, and that was a big step for Chelsea, because she used to be the most competitive one on our team that would freak out. Like, it used to be that she would freak out in that moment. We can't sleep, we have to go, and we just get more and more lost.
Yeah.
But this time she was the one that
Forced to sleep.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that I've learned from racing is, my story is a little shorter. Back in, one of my first big races was in Australia, and we were in the top 5 racing really hard. And then we chose a navigational route that we thought would be a good, not really a shortcut, but like a bold choice. And we got lost for 36 hours. Like, we literally went, off the map, nothing matched. And we wandered around with another team for 36 hours until we had to basically turn around and go back, which is a hard thing to do. And we almost dropped out of the race, because you're disappointed. You're like, there's no way that 36 hours is a long time. But that's really when I learned that both in adventure racing, the expeditions, and in life, like, everything changes. Like, you can have these setbacks. You just got to take a deep breath and, choose a new direction and try to go there. And, we ended up getting back into the top 10, which is crazy, because we went from like 4th place to 70th place. And the same thing happened, again in the Eco Challenge, which was the most recent one that was aired on TV. Is just, we went from 1st place to last place, and we still had this chance to basically be 24 hours behind everybody else in the race, and know that everybody else was going to have problems. I mean, it's the biggest thing that reminds me is I have a tendency to like see Facebook and Instagram and think everybody is having an amazing life. Just like in racing, when like I make a mistake and everybody else doesn't make that mistake, but then it's this realization that everybody's having a hard time. Everybody's having mistakes in their life. We just don't see them all. Like, we only see our mistakes, and it's really easy to focus on them. But you've got a team, and it's like, let's start taking new steps in the right direction and leave that stuff behind, rather than get fixated on the mistakes we made, but to point positive and to start, you can always change that direction. And so that's been a huge lesson for me that I keep learning. So.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing. Well, obviously, to do this type of intense racing and even training, people think it's just the race, but there's hours and hours of training that go into it. You obviously need to take care of your bodies. And I'm sure you have a lot of really unique, hopefully you'll share a few of your secrets with us, and not feel like you're giving them all away. Right. But I know that you guys use CBD for both training and racing. And before we hear about how you use it and what made you consider, I want to actually turn to Ben quickly. Ben, can you tell us what is CBD? It's all the rage. People are using it, but some people are intimidated by it or don't even really know. So maybe you could just give us the quick down and dirty on what is CBD.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of misconceptions out there about what CBD is. And so, yeah, it is good to get that clear off the bat. CBD is really just an organic compound found primarily in the hemp plant. And it is not psychoactive at all. There's a lot of confusion about that. What I mean is, it doesn't get you high at all. It cannot get you high. It's non-addictive. And it's actually really similar to a lot of compounds that your body naturally produces, which is why when you take CBD, your body recognizes it and utilizes it. In fact, we all have a body system that's called an endocannabinoid system, which means we actually produce our own cannabinoids, which is a shocker to most people. We think, okay, yeah, those are from these other plants, but there's really 2 sources of cannabinoids. There's the cannabis plant, which can be hemp or marijuana, and then mammals. We produce cannabinoids. And in fact, we've got more endocannabinoid receptors than any other cellular receptor in our whole bodies, which is usually shocking for people to realize, because most of us grew up learning about like the skeletal system or your digestive system or other body systems, but we didn't learn about this system because it wasn't even discovered until the late 1980s, because it consists of neurotransmitters and very small cellular receptors, so they didn't know it was there. But our bodies produce cannabinoids. We have these cannabinoid receptors throughout our body systems and our cells. And CBD is a cannabinoid from the hemp plant that our bodies recognize and are able to utilize. And it's a little bit unique as a cannabinoid because it's actually able to connect with over 65 different cellular receptors. And so that's why it kind of, when people talk about it, they often seems a little bit like it's a snake oil or something, because like, how does it help you sleep? But it also helps with, pain or inflammation or something like that. It's because it's a little bit of I think of like a master key of sorts. My kids are headed back to school, and you think of like every teacher has a key to their door, but the janitor has the master key to unlock all the different doors. And it's a little bit like that. It connects with over 65 different cellular receptors, which means our body is able to use it for a lot of different things. But it's basically an all natural organic compound found primarily in the hemp plant that our body recognizes and is able to use.
Interesting. Thank you very much. And if y'all have questions about CBD, plug them in there. Ben will answer them. We'll get through some of them as well. We'll probably answer some of them as we continue going. So Jason and Chelsea, you've obviously used CBD, both probably through training and racing. What made you first consider it, as well as when you did first consider it, did you have any concerns when you first tried it?
I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I'm almost 10 years older than Chelsea. So I was, I was a product of the Reagan generation of like, say no to drugs. Right. And so I have this visceral thing in my, my psyche of like that marijuana is bad, right? Like that just is how I grew up, and it's taken a lot of kind of re-education and that kind of stuff. And so CBD to me, when it started coming out, was always associated with that. And I didn't really understand it. I didn't really care to, or, like they were all the, like Ben said, it kind of seems like a snake oil. When you'd see these ads in magazines that basically listed every ailment that I'd, ever imagined not wanting to have, and like CBD helps with them. But as I got older, I started having some severe, I was a very serious yoga practitioner and teacher and acrobat, and I was having hip issues. And so, it turns out I had really bad osteoarthritis in both hips and was going to need to get them replaced and resurfaced. And I still wanted to compete. And so for me, it was a bit of, desperation, if you will, in not wanting to rely on prednisone or, I was racing for many, many years. And as soon as we got to the first foot stage, I was taking like codeine drugs, like,
Wow.
and then you're just like, this is not where I want to be. I don't want to be reliant on oxycodone because that's,
Right.
A way more, evil thing to me than, experimenting with THC or CBD or whatever. And so for me, it kind of just became wanting to avoid other things.
Yeah.
And, this last hip surgery that I had, I really wanted to recover aggressively and as naturally as possible. And so that's really when, both pre-surgery as I was getting ready and still training hard. And then afterwards was when I first kind of started taking it. And it was, just in the form of the gel.
Yeah.
And that was giving me some pretty good pain relief, like, so that I really noticed it. And then, with the oil, so, it's been pretty amazing. I've always been more reluctant than Chelsea. Chelsea is all about like recovery and paying attention and taking care of herself. And I've always been all trained, and I haven't left time for that.
Right.
The massages and the stretching and all that stuff. But the CBD was something that was easy. And, I instantly, I don't want to say instantly, but like within a few days, I would notice when I wasn't using it. That's the biggest way I notice is like I was taking CBD oil, getting good sleep and feeling good and training. And then for whatever reason, we'd go somewhere and I would forget. And then I'd have 2 or 3 days of like bad sleep and feel achy and be like, man, this sucks. I'm getting old. And then Chelsea I'll say, hey, have you been using that stuff? And I'd be like, oh no, I haven't. Right. Cause it wasn't a habit yet. And so that was the first huge clue in for me. But it's been pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was all about, with Jason's surgery, I was doing some research and just trying everything and being like, hey, we should do this. And we changed our eating habits leading up to his surgeries, before and after. And then I forget who it was, but somebody handed me some Mission Farms on at a meeting.
Oh, Laird's, it was.
Oh, Laird Superfood. Yeah,
Yeah.
a guy who works with Laird Superfood, and I write for gearjunkie.com. And so he was like, hey, can you try this out? And I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And I gave some to Jason, and my big aha was I used it and I felt great, but I gave some to his mother, who is has battling cancer and arthritis really bad. And she had tried other creams that I had given her, like arnica. And she was just like, I'm not going to try it. And I was like, just try it. Just try this one. And she did. And a few days later, she called me up and she was like, I need more of that. Like, I need that. And I need the oils, whatever they make, I need more of it. And so that was like oh, wow, this stuff really does work, because she tried everything and she was the pickiest person ever. And she was like, okay, I'm in. And so I was like, okay, cool.
Awesome. Yeah, we got a question that came in. It actually dovetails into what I was going to ask next, but what do you use? We've heard you mention oils and creams and gels. And I know Mission Farms has an amazing joint and muscle gel. I've personally used it as well as an athlete, and I'm a big fan. So what methods of application or ingestion are you using? We'd love to hear a little bit about that.
I mean, we kind of have a protocol. We use the muscle gel. We basically tried everything, but we've kind of settled on using the muscle gel because they also make the little things that we can take racing. Honestly.
And the beeswax that they just made.
But we were using the muscle gels recovery. Like, so we'd have a hard training day, and especially with my hip, or shoulders, we'd be using that. And then every night we started using the oil, just the rest of the relax,
relief,
the little oil tinctures. And mostly we were using that for me as kind of an anti-inflammatory, because when I would train, I'd have a big inflammation response because I just had hip surgery and all this stuff. And so those are the two big things. Obviously we've used Chelsea loves the bath, because that's really relaxing. But the main two ones we use are the gel and the oil. And the gel is mostly to deal with stuff, either while we're training, or we've just started using it racing. Ironically, we never thought of doing it mid-race, but when Chelsea was in the 24-hour national championship for mountain biking,
which she won,
yeah. She was hurting, and a lot of people were hurting. You'd see these athletes coming in with stiff backs. So they've been riding for, hours and hours on the same trail round and round. And I just started putting the cream on her back, or the gel on her back every other lap. And it was amazing. And I finally started going around to other athletes around me that were really stiffening up and taking longer breaks and just offering it to them, which was great. So there was another woman next to us that was, her competitor, but was just like really struggling. And so she started using it, and she was able to finish the race instead of dropping out. But so that's cool. So they have the applicator, the roll-on beeswax one, which is also easy to transport. Yeah. So we've started using that, but really, I think the crux for us is the oil, because number one, it helps with our overall inflammation response. We'll be taking it to the World Championships and nationals, which is coming up, the national event racing, just because we know that inflammation is a huge battle in these races, the endurance races, and then sleep. Yeah, like using it for sleep. That for me, probably the biggest benefit is that I've been tracking my sleep now for a year, and I'm the guy that, gets done with my workout, comes home, and for some reason thinks they can get work done at 10 o'clock at night. And before I know it, it's like midnight, and I lay in bed thinking about all the things I need to do. Right. And I've got this little ring, the Oura ring or whatever.
The Oura ring
that tracks my sleep and latency and all this stuff. And so what I started to notice is that if I took the CBD oil 45 minutes before I was going to go to bed, my sleep latency, like the time from when I lay down to actually fall to sleep, was tiny. It was like, 10 to 15 minutes. And when I didn't take the CBD oil, I would literally lay in bed for an hour and a half with my mind racing, not getting rest. And, with kids and everything, the efficiency, I was like, man, all I got to do is, take this stuff. And I didn't even care about the quality of my sleep. I was just getting an hour and a half more sleep a night. because I would just, my body could I'm imagining, like I imagine things that CBD does. I don't know, Ben knows the actual science, but I'm like, oh, this helps me down regulate. And like, lets my body wants to go to sleep, but it like helps my mind, go down that pathway. So
Yeah, that's
So
a great,
over-
oh, go ahead, Chelsea. Go ahead.
Well, so in a recap, our favorites are the gel, the Relieve gel, and the rest tincture oil that you take.
Oil that you take and you put it in your mouth, under your tongue, or just in your
Yeah.
mouth as well. That's actually a great segue. Ben, let's talk a little bit about the science of CBD and how it works, and how does that work versus some alternatives that people may be more familiar with, ibuprofen, things that a lot of us athletes are using constantly, or other things to help us sleep. Tell us a little bit about both the science and how it compares to alternative things available.
Yeah, absolutely. I can try to, just touch on a little bit on like how it works with pain and inflammation, and then also with sleep as well. Yeah, when it comes to, like Jason was talking about with his hip surgery, obviously they're putting their bodies through really, really intense activities. You do experience pain. The way that CBD works is actually related to what's called the runner's high. Many of you as athletes are familiar with the runner's high. When you've put your body through extremely strenuous activity, it reaches a point where you kind of get a second wind, and the pain starts to go away and you start feeling good. What that is in your body is actually a endocannabinoid called anandamide. A lot of scientists used to think of it as adrenaline, but it's actually a cannabinoid your body produces called anandamide. That's what produces the runner's high experience, and it reduces pain. Well, when you take CBD, what CBD does is it makes that anandamide more available in your body by preventing it from being taken up by receptors. So it's a reuptake inhibitor, CBD. So it's allowing your body's natural painkiller to be more of it available for a longer period of time, as opposed to something, that's just masking the pain or hiding it in some way. It's really boosting your body's natural pain killing activities. And it does it, of course, in a all natural way. It's not like Jason referenced, it's not addictive, and it doesn't have these other side effects. It doesn't damage your liver. And so when it comes to pain, a lot of athletes are beginning to turn to CBD as an alternative, because it's just boosting your body's natural ability to address pain. With inflammation, Jason talked about inflammation as well. And of course, managing inflammation, reducing inflammation is really important as an athlete. Of course, inflammation is your body's natural response to some type of injury, and inflammation protects you initially. But the problem is, let's say you injured your ankle. If you keep using that joint while the inflammation is there, it can cause secondary damage. And so it's of course important to try to reduce inflammation before you start being active again. And CBD is a really powerful anti-inflammatory, and it works in a couple of different ways. But one of those is called retrograde signaling. CBD, your body uses, or your endocannabinoid system uses CBD to send the message to your immune system that hey, time to back off. Like you're overproducing inflammation, you're responding too strongly. It's time to back off, immune system, and reduce inflammation. It's called retrograde signaling, and CBD is one of the compounds your body can use to get that message across. It also reduces other pro-inflammatory, the production of other pro-inflammatory compounds. CBD does, and as a result, it does that. It reduces inflammation, and again, it does it in a all natural way without these other side effects or damages. And so, like Chelsea and Jason referred to, as an athlete, there's a couple different ways to address that inflammation. So like if you just have inflammation in one area, say it's your shoulder, you can use CBD in a topical form, like in a gel or a cream or a balm stick, and you can apply it just to that area, and it'll help reduce inflammation in that area. Alternatively, you can ingest CBD with like an oil, like I talked about, you put under your tongue, or a capsule of some kind, although the oils are better because you absorb more of it. And that helps with more systemic inflammation. So like in adventure racing where you're like, you guys are, it's not like, oh, it's just my elbow that hurts. No, it's like my whole body is hurting right now. And so that's when, it's a good time to take it, to ingest it. And that can really help more with systemic inflammation. And again, unlike other anti-inflammatories, you have an all natural compound that doesn't have side effects, that doesn't cause damage to your liver or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you mentioned a couple times that CBD is not addictive, but is there any examples or studies of it having negative effects? And then a question that came through along the same lines is, are there any contraindications with prescription drugs, specifically antidepressants or anti-anxiety drugs? Can you talk a little bit about the potential negative, if there is any, or contraindications to over-the-counter or prescribed drugs?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, there aren't any issues with SSRIs, like was mentioned, or antidepressants or that kind of thing. If the medication that you're on says not to take that medication with grapefruit, then you don't want to take CBD, because CBD and grapefruit both have a similar compound that can affect absorption rates of that medication. So that's one thing that you want to be aware of. There has been some really bad press about CBD damaging, causing liver damage potentially. It was specifically an online article in Forbes a couple of years ago that had a very clickbait title to it. But if you went and you looked at the study, the articles and the kind of the blow up was all based on a single study with 6 rats. And they took these rats and they just pumped them full of CBD, 1,000 to 10,000 times the recommended dose of a normal like CBD company like ours. And the rats' livers did not do well, which is absolutely understandable. If you gave if one of us took 1,000 to 10,000 times the recommended dose of Advil or water, drank 1,000 times the amount of water, it's not going to go well for you. Or another analogy would be, it's okay for me to have a beer tonight. It's probably not okay for me to have 10,000 beers tonight. So that one article creates some controversy, but that was actually the context related to that. So overall, it's been shown to be a healthy or safe drug. In fact, it's approved by the FDA as a anti-seizure drug for children. And children are taking as much as 600 to 800 milligrams a dose.
Right.
Cool.
How about go ahead, Jason.
One just quick comment that I'm excited about. I have I'm just starting to be excited today to use CBD. I always get excited when I can try it for new things, but we did a big race this weekend, and Chelsea and I, the 2 things we hate most in the world are mosquitoes and poison oak. And I just got poison oak. We had it on our wedding. It was like systemic. We both get really, really bad poison oak, but close to as bad as poison oak is prednisone, which is like the standard cure for poison oak if you get it really bad. And I was just reading of like, what can I do besides take prednisone? Because I hate prednisone. The side effects are almost as bad as not itching myself to death. And like the first thing that came up was using CBD for very similar and safer, less side effects than prednisone. So I just took some this morning because I was having problems sleeping because I was itchy everywhere. And I feel great. So, it's only a case study of like 2 hours, but I'm not sitting here driving myself crazy, and I haven't tapped into my like prednisone stash that I save for emergencies.
Oh, good tip. Real live experience. So similarly, you guys are obviously professional athletes. Did you guys have any concerns using it as professional athletes? I don't know how many professional athletes are on the phone. Certainly I'm not one of them, but there's definitely, concern. Like, can you be drug tested? Is this against the rules? What did you guys have concerns about that? And is that a concern for you guys?
That has not come up as a concern for us personally. But I have heard it from other professional athletes. In the OCR world that I dabbled in a little bit, those athletes have been asking me about it and been discussing within each other. But I think that I don't know. What do you?
The great thing is that, Chelsea's mom is a flight attendant. And so her concern, because she was very interested in starting to use it, just was the THC. Like, if you're in a thing where they are drug testing, like you guys saw in the Olympics, the sprinter that basically tested positive for THC before the Olympics, and was banned. So that, that's definitely a concern. We're always paying attention to that. But, from our understanding and talking to Ben and doing some research, the levels that are in it are like, unless we were dosing a lot. Like I remember a story from Ben when he had like oral surgery and took like a pretty heavy dose of the CBD, and it helped. And we actually had
market research. Yeah.
Market research. Right. And we have a friend that we were out training at the cabin with another racer, and his wife was out there. She has TMJ, which is like lockjaw, and she was just having migraines, and she just her normal treatments were working. So we were like, take 5 dropperfuls, right? Because I literally, we just heard this story from you. Take 5 dropperfuls and see what happens. And that's a lot. And she took 5 dropperfuls, and amazing. Like, the rest of her day was great. And like 12 hours later, she was like, I feel a little stoned, right? And she was super happy. She was like, this is amazing. But, for us, we are paying attention to that. We also know that we can get the pure, right? So, Mission Farms makes a CBD oil that is, I guess, more, rigorously strained or whatever it is, that is basically
zero THC in it. Yeah.
Zero THC.
Yeah.
So, probably for world championships, because again, we know we're going to use it at world championships and nationals. So it's an easy thing for athletes, I think, especially if they're worried about not so much the effects of it, but testing positive, or for her mom that's a flight attendant, that Alaska Airlines has a 0 tolerance policy. If there's anything in there, boom, you're fired. I think that there are some great alternatives, and you're just buying the pure.
Ben, that's maybe a good transition over to you, just as people are concerned about THC. Talk to us a little bit about, is there THC in it? I know, like, I used some when my dad was also battling cancer that had split, so you hear of some that do a little bit of both. You have to get that at a certain place. So maybe talk to us a little bit about that, since it came up with Jason and Chelsea.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are different types of CBD. So there's totally THC free CBD that you can get. And then there's CBD called broad spectrum that has other cannabinoids in it, but no THC. And then you've got full spectrum that has CBD, other cannabinoids, and trace amounts of THC. Now, the most effective, time and time again, has been shown to be full spectrum. The more cannabinoids that you have involved, that are in the conversation, so to speak, at work, the most effective it is. If you have CBD alone, CBD isolate, it's less effective. But obviously, depending on your own body and the regulations, you can decide what you want to use. If you want to go with a THC free, or if you want to go with more of like a full spectrum that has trace amounts of THC. Now, all of these are legal as long as a product has below 0.3% THC. It's a legal CBD product in the United States. And when it comes to legality, in fact, in 2018, the World Anti-Doping Agency and the US Anti-Doping Agency both removed CBD from their list of prohibited substances. And they also actually raised the levels of THC that can be in your system 10x to avoid these issues of people accidentally, tripping a test, a drug test when they've been taking full spectrum CBD. But it always does make sense to look at the regulations of that sport or that event, and always and only get CBD from a company that publishes its, they're called COAs, or certificates of analysis, because those certificates of analysis show, first of all, that the THC is below 0.3%. So just the tiniest amount in there. And that makes it a legal product. Those COAs also will show that there aren't pesticides or arsenic or lead or other heavy metals that aren't good for your body as a human or as an athlete. And so you want to definitely go to a legitimate source that publishes those COAs, so you can be confident that there's not too much THC in there and that aren't other heavy metals or pesticides. Oh, maybe I could speak to dosing real quick too.
Sure.
In like kind of the comment about the TMJ and stuff, it's not the CBD. So CBD will never make you high. Never. It doesn't do it. It's if you're using a, really large dose of a full spectrum product, the amount of THC in there gets larger and could affect you. So, as an athlete, you want to, you want to be taking, if you're using a full spectrum product, which is generally the most effective product, you want to be looking at a dose that's for ingestible, a dose that's probably under 150 milligrams. Like the normal regular recommended dose would be 25 milligrams to 50 milligrams. As an athlete, you might push that higher, but you don't want to push it generally above 150 milligrams because the THC can start to creep up, and that could cloud your judgment in some way as an athlete. So you want to stay below those levels. When you're using a topical, there really isn't much concern there. It's because of the absorption rates are lower. So you can put, like they talk about, like the gel, like you can put it on, every few hours if you need to, and you don't need to be concerned about THC levels at all.
Perfect.
And weren't you saying that it metabolizes in 4 hours or something like that?
Yeah, generally, when you, especially when you think about, ingesting it or putting it on topically, it depends on the body, but 3 to 5 hours is usually the how long you'll experience the benefits of it.
Perfect. Well, we have about 10 minutes left. I just want to do a quick time check. There's a couple questions that I want to get to, and then I've got just a couple more that pivot towards these questions. So if this is a question maybe for both of you from a user's experience, I know Ben, you also use it, but from the science perspective, if someone's completely new to CBD, do you have any recommendations for getting started, either with a specific product or just general guidance on how to get started using CBD?
I mean, from my experience, I would just say, if you're looking for more like muscular pain, like sore joints or stuff like that, I think the easy no-brainer is just the gel, right? One of the great things that I like about the gel too is that for me, I'm a science guy that is also skeptical of a lot of stuff. I was skeptical of CBD for a long time, but at least when I started the gel, it's also formulated. It's got like the menthol, like it's like an icy hot, like it has that cool feeling. So I was willing to use it more, because I was like, well, even if the CBD doesn't do anything, right? Like I've got this gel that like feels good on my muscles. And so then, I was more willing to be consistent with it, to start to understand the anti-inflammatory benefits. And then, if you're kind of looking for general for sleep, I mean, I can't recommend enough just starting with the low levels of the full spectrum CBD, the rest or relieve, or, relax, any of those three, like before you go to bed, and just try that for a week. Track your sleep, and it's amazing. Like that was the thing that really sold me on it. I started, we have kids and crazy lives and training and all that stuff, but for me to feel like I was getting more sleep and deeper sleep made a huge difference in just my mood, my ability to train, my ability to be a good parent with my kids. It was like that was what knocked it out of the park for me. And that's, it's an easy thing. It's just a tincture. You'd add it to your, nightside table by toothbrush or whatever, and just, try it for a week. Those are my suggestions, but I'm sure everybody else has.
Yeah, mine's same as his.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. If you're looking for pain or inflammation in a localized area, some type of topical that you rub on is a great way to start. But I think, like Jason said, if you're looking for effectiveness with sleep, it's better to use CBD that you ingest versus just kind of rubbing on your skin. And you can start, I always tell people, start with half the recommended dose, on the bottle the first night. Great, everything's fine. Then go to the recommended dose, and you can increase from there. I know a question popped up as like, can you use like weight, too much? Like I mentioned with with this FDA approved drug, there's kids that are taking 800 milligrams of it, but with a full spectrum product, I recommend staying below 150 milligrams. But start with like 15 or 25, and then if that works great for you, stick there. But you can increase it from there as well.
Yeah, and along those same lines, I think you obviously answered the question about overuse, but maybe you could talk to us a little bit about, does the quality differ by manufacturer? Jason, you were mentioning the snake oil, and people make all these promises, and I think that's where people get nervous. Like, can it really cure all of this, or are you getting what people say you're getting? If it's more expensive, if it's cheaper, like, talk to us a little bit about that, Ben, on a manufacturer level.
Yeah, there's definitely a spectrum of quality. And so some things you want to look for, again, are, first of all, like I mentioned, those COA, certificates of analysis, that show that there's actually that much CBD in the product or in the bottle. There's been plenty of studies done that show that a lot of companies didn't have the full amount, advertised amount in there. So you want to look at those, and you want to check those for sure. And then you want to look at where the company is sourcing the CBD as well. You do not want to touch anything that's coming from outside of the United States. And the more that company is linked to, good farming practices, and maybe in a farm you can trace it to, is really important. I know for us at Mission Farms, we entered into the CBD market for that reason, because we wanted to provide people a trusted source of CBD, so where we could say, hey, this comes from like our farm in Tumalo, near Bend, Oregon. We test the soil, we test the hemp, then we test the hemp extract, then we test the final product 4 times, to give, because we want to make sure our families and our kids, or, our friends, we're getting a quality product, just like our customers. So those 2 things: look at the COAs, and then look at the sourcing of it. And can you trace the sourcing to, a legitimate source that you feel good about, like a local farm?
Great, thank you. One quick question is, when you're putting it on topically, does it actually go from the skin to the tissue? So would it get to the muscle tissue or to the joint tissue? What is that process like?
Mm-hmm. So when you apply it topically, it does absorb through your skin and to the tissues below. But the degree to which it does depends on what else is in that particular product. So different base ingredients will help the CBD absorb at different rates. And so if you have a product that has, like, for example, our balm stick is mixed with coconut MCT oil, because that MCT oil bonds with the CBD and it passes through your skin easier. And so you look for a product that has a base substance that has a higher absorption rate.
Perfect. And any history of it causing lethargy or making people feel tired? I mean, obviously, if you're using the rest to sleep, that's sort of the point, right? But maybe it depends on the product that you're using. Is that an issue?
Yeah, no, let me speak to that really quickly, because I know Jason and Chelsea had this question back a while ago. They never thought about using it in competition because they were afraid it would make them tired. But CBD doesn't actually, it's not a sedative. That's not actually how it helps you sleep. The way that it helps you sleep is by increasing the levels of another compound that your body produces in order to help you sleep. It's called adenosine. Your body, to go to sleep, your body produces more and more adenosine as you're awake. And when it reaches peak levels, you get tired and you go to sleep. And as you sleep, the adenosine diminishes, and that helps wake you up. What CBD does is it actually helps regulate the production of adenosine and the distribution throughout your body, so that you're falling asleep when you should be falling asleep and waking up when you should be waking up. So it's not a sedative, which is really important to understand. So it helps you go to sleep, but it actually helps you wake up. So it's not going to make you feel groggy or sedated when you're actually competing or when you're training.
Great. That's great clarity.
That's been our experience too. It's almost like it lets you make the choice and go to sleep more effectively, and wake up more effectively. It doesn't, we've never really had the thing, we take it and then we're trying to do some more work or whatever and get groggy.
Yeah, we've actually, since we talked to Ben a few months ago about it, we've been using it overnight in our night trainings, and we've been testing it, and now he's correct.
Perfect. Thank you. And just since we're kind of wrapping up, there's one more question, but before we jump to that question, you guys see on the screen, we are offering 30% off to Mission Farm. So please go and try some products of your choice. I'm also personally a user, and I love the muscle gel. I just had some really challenging run-in with plantar fasciitis and Achilles tendonitis, and I was rubbing it up and down my leg every day, and I can say that it's now gone due to that and a lot of other stretching. So I'm a believer as well and a user of it. So please go and use this coupon. Additionally, let's see if I can switch the screen here. We do have a couple other offers. If you are an Outside Plus member, please know that you have 40% off to Mission Farms in your perk store. So if you're already a member, please go and find that little extra discount there. If you are not a member of Outside Plus, which is our new membership platform, lots of great perks, access to content. We are offering a 15% discount. You can scan this QR code here if you've got your phone available, or the website. We will be sending out an email tomorrow with some of this follow-up information also. So you can see the webinar again if you like, or you missed part of it, and get these additional things. And if you sign up for Outside Plus, we will be sending you this great little gift box from Mission Farms that gives you a free travel size. And these are the travel sizes Jason was talking about that they race with of the joint and muscle relief cream, or gel that you will get. So want to leave this up here just while we answer the final question. I think we might have touched on this a little bit, but Ben, are there any emotional responses? This person is saying that they have used CBD for their son with ADHD. So we know that it helps work with relaxation and sleep, but is there any correlation to help with ADHD or those stress related disorders?
Yeah, sure. So I have to be really careful about talking about, particular conditions. But there is information out there and studies out there on CBD and autism and CBD and ADHD. And so I would just encourage you to do some of the research and look at some of the studies that are out there on those. Because I would say this, because it is there's an approved CBD drug for children by the FDA. That helps a lot of parents feel comfortable with experimenting with CBD, of course, starting in small doses with kids, and depending on what their issues may be, whether it's sleep or anxiety or hyperactivity or that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I just encourage people to do some research on it and for yourself, and knowing that there is an FDA approved drug for children with CBD.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, we're right at the hour. Thank you, everybody. This was super helpful. Hope everybody found it useful. There's a lot more information out there. We will be sending some of it to you as well. Hope you can go on and grab some product and give it a try. We'd love to hear from you if you do. And thank you again. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Jason and Chelsea. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye. All right.